And good evening and welcome to the Scanner Guys. I'm Jonathan Higgins, your host for the next hour. We're going to be talking about a great topic, road warriors and scanners. So I've been really looking forward to this topic. Basically, a friend of mine from Massachusetts drives a big rig throughout the Northeast, and he uses a scanner all the time on the truck. So I figured, this is definitely a great topic. As you can see, I'm the only one here tonight. The reason being, Rich Carlson is finally retired. He's worked so many decades now, working in the field as a police officer, behind the scenes, and then working for Scanner Master for several years. And then he joined the Scanner Guys show. We put this together about 4 years ago, and Rich is wanting to spend a little bit more time with his family and wants to be able to put his feet up and relax. So we appreciate everything that Rich has done over the last several years for the show. Enjoy that time with your family. But we do have great things coming up. The Scanner Guys is still going to be around. We've got a lot of great shows coming up, so we're looking forward to being able to continue on the shows. We will have some guest hosts here and there. So hopefully we'll have them in relatively soon. We have a few people lined up, so they'll be guest hosting with me. We've got a brand new logo, a brand new intro. We've got new swag, which is really cool. So definitely check it out on our website, thescannerguyshow.com. The really cool logo. So we're starting off with a brand new fresh start for the month of October. Let's start the show. I'm really excited about this show. So let's take a look at the slideshow presentation. Now, we don't have trucker hats yet, but that's a really cool thing that I was able to do when making this this thumbnail. So basically, it's road warriors and scanners. So anybody that drives a big rig, or you have an hour-long commute in the car, you've got your scanner going. So we're going to talk about some of the great scanners that you can use for traveling, whether you're a road warrior or you're in your own personal vehicle traveling to and from work, or even some of the things is doing a road trip as well. We want to remind you, follow, like, and subscribe to the Scanner Guys. We're on social media across the board: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and of course, Twitter. So follow us at the Scanner Guys. Make sure you shop our store, which is on our website, thescannerguyshow.com. You can contact us through the website and sign up for our newsletter. You actually got a newsletter this evening, telling a little bit about the show tonight and showing off some of the brand new swag that we have. So super exciting show. So let's continue on. So road warriors and scanners. So we're going to take a look at some of the best mobile scanners. Now, we're looking at mobile scanners because typically that's going to be going in a vehicle. Of course, anything that I show tonight, there's a portable equivalent to it. So if you don't have the space, you certainly can do a portable radio. But our prime focus is going to be mobile radios. There's a lot of options. We're looking at the Uniden stable of scanners. Now, the reason being is you can connect up a GPS receiver, which Uniden manufactures. So that's why we're focusing on Uniden, because it gives you a hands-free experience. With some of the Whistlers, Radio Shacks, or the past GREs, you would have to be turning things on and off as you're traveling, either turning off a scan list or a new scan list, if it's like a TX1 or a TX2 that you're using. So we're focusing tonight on the Uniden radios. Now, I can't say enough about the 15X. It certainly has its place in the stable for Uniden. The 15X is not digital, but if you're not monitoring public safety, the 15X is a great radio for rail, aviation, and maritime. It's what we call a clean slate scanner. What does that mean, clean slate? It means that there's nothing programmed into it. It needs to be programmed for all the areas that you're looking to monitor. So that means everything must be programmed. One of the benefits to the radio is it's got an external headphone jack, not headphone jack, but external speaker jack in the rear. It also has a headphone jack in the front. And it also has a GPS serial cable in the rear, which is a nice solid connection if you are using the GPS. It's been around for a while, the 15X. Certainly a workhorse for analog, and it will do analog trunking as well. So if you're still monitoring a lot of public safety with analog and analog trunking, this is a great radio to use. But for now, I would say for us, if you're just into rail, air, and maritime, this is a good option. And of course, you can program this and set it up for GPS. Now, when you import things in from Radio Reference, if you're using the Butel software, this will be ARC XT, you can import in GPS data, which is in the background, latitude and longitude for these various agencies. Just make sure you enable them when you do import them in. And of course, in the Butel software, you can tweak latitude, longitude, and radius. So this one here, honorable mention tonight, especially for those rail, air, and maritime fans. Going to another clean slate scanner. Now, if you like doing the programming on your own, you're not into the database scanners or the zip code scanners, the 996 P2 is the one to go for. So this radio is capable of doing P25, trunking, and you, of course, can do the upgrades for DMR, Next Edge, and Pro Voice. Those are paid upgrades on the radio. The reason being, I get this question all the time. Why should I be paying for these upgrades? It keeps the sticker price on the scanner down. So basically how it works is Uniden pays for each license of these type of digital formats. So of course, P25 is included on the radio. So DMR, Next Edge, and Pro Voice, they only have to pay for those licenses that are activated. So when you activate one of those licenses, of course, you pay them. They then have to pay a cut to whoever they need to. That's, the basics of it without getting into the weeds. The other thing that I mention all the time, only get what you need. What is it? I can't remember what insurance company it is, pay for only what you need. So essentially the same thing. It's the one with the Statue of Liberty. I can't think of it. I mean, I'm sure some of you know which one it is. So basically, if you're not using Liberty Mutual, that's what it is. So Liberty Mutual. So think of it like this. So if you're not in an area where there's any Pro Voice, you don't need that. You don't need DMR or Next Edge, then don't buy them. Only pay for what you basically need. So this one here is definitely a good radio. It's more of your traditional radio where it's a database, where it's a non-database scanner, which has the memory structure where it's a system, the group, and the agency. Let's take a look a little further. So most of you remember the Home Patrol 1. Of course, the Home Patrol 1 is retired. And of course, the Home Patrol 2 came out. Now, this one is a favorite for travelers. Now, the reason being large screen, touch screen, full database, and you can use the GPS. Now, it doesn't look pretty when it's all hooked up. Basically, your connectors are on the left and the right. So there's a whole bunch of connectors. Of course, you get your antenna, your power connector, your GPS connector, and it's kind of the wires are going out the sides. It doesn't look pretty, but it'll work great as a mobile radio. Touchscreen display, as I mentioned, small footprint in the vehicle. So it's not taking up much room. There's also that RAM windshield mount that you can purchase for this particular radio. So it's suction cups to the windshield. Another thing that it could be a drawback is that SD card is behind the batteries in the battery compartment. So if you flip the radio over, you will see that the batteries are back there when you take the door off, and then you'll see the SD card back there. And as I mentioned, the GPS, the power, and the antennas connectors are all on the side. A great radio. Typically, how this is used for me as being a road warrior is when I arrive to my hotel. This is a great radio that you can get that unit in travel bag, the Home Patrol bag that's on Scanner Master's website. And basically, you can put all your stuff in there, set it up real quick at the hotel. Typically, I don't use the stock antenna. I'll use the SMA to BNC adapter, change that out, and use a telescoping antenna that I'm not using for one of these bad boys. And that works great in the hotel. And it's got the touchscreen display. I'll create favorites list prior to my trip. And as we mention all the time during the shows, extra SD card. Make sure you carry one. The thing is if you make it and you have it with you, you'll never have a corrupt SD card. You'll never have an issue. The second you don't bring it, guess what happens? And if you don't have your computer with you to reformat and recreate the card, you're SOL, which is not good. But this is definitely a good radio for in the vehicle. Keep in mind, you may want to do some things with the cables, kind of tuck them in the back. Of course, they come out of the sides and everything, so keep that in mind. Now we're going to get into the interesting radios where it's more traditional for those road warriors. All the connectors on your 996 P2, of course, were on the back, as the same for the Uniden BC 536 HP. Now, this is the radio that I have in the vehicle. And you're probably wondering, why do I have this in the vehicle? Ain't you worried about simulcast issues and all that business? Being mobile, you're a rolling target. So you're constantly, your location is changing. So I found, for using this radio mobily, it's not really an issue for simulcast. I'm either going to get the signal really good or I'm going to get a little bit of choppiness. For the most part, I don't see it as much. When I'm traveling throughout Ohio, I found that this radio works really well, even in those areas where simulcast is an issue. Sometimes, you may get a little digital sound, but you're moving and the reception will get better, maybe at the next block. Larger screen, which is nice. The other thing that I like about this radio is the soft keys along the bottom. Now, being the driver and having to have the scanner in the middle, that avoid button is in the perfect spot. It's the closest button to me. So if there's something that's chirping over that radio that I'm not interested in, I just tap that avoid button once. It'll do a temporary avoid. Of course, if I don't want to hear it ever again, I'm going to do that double tap on the avoid. The thing I would recommend if you are using this mobily and you have it connected to your ignition switch, so when you turn your ignition off, the radio turns off, turn off the replay. Now, we found issues when people had the replay on. What would end up happening, of course, when the scanner replay is on, it's constantly saving to the SD card the last couple minutes of audio, and you may catch it right at that point where you turn the ignition off and it was in the middle of saving a radio transmission. Guess what happens when you interrupt a file that's being saved? A corrupted file. That corrupted file, the next time you boot up your radio, could cause an error and it'll show on the screen. Now, if you do have your extra SD card laying around, it's a quick fix. But still, you don't want to be constantly reformatting and replacing that SD card, re-updating the SD card all the time, because it keeps getting corrupt. So what I recommend is turning off the replay. Now, the SD card access is super easy compared to the Home Patrol 1 and 2. It's right in the front. This allows you to leave your radio in the vehicle, eject that micro SD card, bring it in the house, put it into a reader, and then you're done. Quick and easy. The other thing that's a benefit to this radio, if you want to bring your laptop out to the vehicle The programming jack is right in the front, right below the E. GPS connection is also in the rear. The external speaker also in the rear, that jack. So all your wires are tucked away nice and neat in the back of the radio, so you're not dealing with wires, going out the left or the right or the front. Of course, use the external jack if you're using a external speaker, not the headphone jack. Now, the headphone jack in the front is going to have a resistor that's reducing down your volume, because they don't want you to put headphones on and blast your eardrums out. This radio, of course, has a larger display, which is nice. I like this radio. It works really well. I keep it in the, when I'm driving in the vehicle, I keep it in the screen where it's the lesser of the information on the screen. So you get the 3 lines nice and big. If you put it in the detailed display mode, those lines tend to be a little bit smaller and it's harder to see. Now, the other thing that I do with this radio as well is I use the light, blue for police, red for fire, and so on. So I can see that flashing. I know it's a transmission with the police, or if or the fire, whoever it may be, depending on the color. So definitely take advantage of that. GPS driven scanner as well. And I can't say enough about this radio. This is one of my favorites. Works great mobily. So don't discount this radio because, oh no, simulcast. You're a rolling target. For the most part, your reception is always going to be constantly changing. Where you should look at the next radio is if you're stationary. So let's say you're in between 2 towers where there's simulcast and you're running into a lot of issues there. You need something like an SDS because it's never going to improve unless your house is moving on wheels. But yes, you can use the SDS in the vehicle. Of course, it's a database scanner. It's got a humongous screen, as you can see there. It's super large. Easy access to the SD card right in the front. Programming jack in the front as well. Also has 3 soft keys. Now, a little difference in between the 536 versus the 996. Excuse me. I don't know why I keep saying 996, but 536 versus the SDS 200. So those soft keys will change with whatever is up on the top on the screen. Right in this screen, you can see system, department, and channel. Now, it's in the geeky display mode where you can see everything. When you're using this mobily, you probably want to go to the basic. So if you're at a traffic light and you want to glance down who's communicating, you're not like going, oh, what is it? Because everything's all different size fonts. When you're in the basic mode, you can see everything's going to be, all 3 lines are going to be the exact same size. Of course, you can customize the screen as well with different colors. You can also change the alert light so it's different colors as well for different departments, which takes additional programming. Now, the thing is you've noticed GPS connection in the rear. Now, Uniden mixed things up a bit when it came to this radio. It's a phone jack. And the other thing is the GPS dongle is actually powered by the radio. Unlike the other radios that we looked at, the GPS kit requires power for that dongle. This is the only radio on the slideshow tonight that doesn't require power for that dongle because it's coming off the radio. And that is on the rear of the radio. Now, the USB-A jack. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, why is that there? We still don't know. As of right now, I don't know why it's there. It's there. I know if you decide to take your iPhone, a little cable and plug it into the front, it will power your phone. Matter of fact, if you take a 996, not a 96, a Home Patrol 2 and plug it in there, it'll do the same thing. It'll power the Home Patrol 2, which is really interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, this radio is a bit of an investment. It is not the cheapest radio. So if you're looking to go mobile with it and you're tossed in between the SDS 200 and the 536 HP, the 536 is a great mobile radio. It works really well. It's not as expensive as the SDS 200, but if you have the ability to pay for the SDS 200, definitely do that. If you do have these radios in your vehicle, keep in mind you may want to cover them up when you're parked somewhere other than at home, just in case somebody's peering into your vehicle and they see this piece of equipment. They may break the window and steal it. So definitely cover it up if possible. Now, we've talked about a lot about this GPS receiver. So let's take a look at the GPS receiver. A lot of components. We did a whole show on the GPS receiver. You can see a lot of things that are there. There's a cigarette lighter adapter, which of course powers the dongle. The serial connections that'll connect to most mobile radios is over on the far right on the screen. The dongle is in the right next to there, and then the unit itself, which all the cables feed off of, is in the middle. And then, of course, we've got a couple other serial connections there as well. So depending on the type of radio and model, you basically use what you need. On the channel, there's a whole video that we did basically explaining if you've got this radio, these cables are needed. If you have this radio, these cables are needed. Current GPS ready scanners. Most of them made an appearance tonight on the show. So the current models, of course, is the BCT15X, the BCD325P2, the 996P2. Now remember, plugging this into the radio is not going to magically make it work. You need to do the programming and enable the GPS coordinates as well. So definitely do that. That's certainly going to be handy. As for the database scanners for the United States and Canada, these radios, you can basically plug it in, enable GPS scanning, and away you go. And that's the 436, the 536, the SDS 100 and 200, and the Home Patrol 2. Now remember, there's other radios in the unit and stable that are able to do this. We're just looking at the current models that are available to you. And of course, you have the ability with a GPS database to use it on a favorites list as well. So if you create a favorites list, you're able to enable GPS scanning on any one of those database scanners, and you can just monitor that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So many of you are probably wondering, how does the GPS work? You see that we've got the scanner guy's truck on Route 44 traveling through Plimpton, Massachusetts, leaving my buddy's town, Will, over in Plymouth and heading towards Middleborough and probably migrating over to Taunton. And if it stays on 44, it'll end up in Providence, Rhode Island. So how does it work? Let's take a look at it. So basically on radio reference, if you get a database scanner in the background, which you don't see, database administrators are able to input information such as latitude and longitude for each city or town, if it's conventional, or each grouping for a trunk system, a latitude, longitude, and a radius. So basically what happens is, let's say, for example, with our map here, we've got our truck located in Boone, overlapping with the circle for Sumner and Newport. Since it's within those circle radiuses, it's going to be able to hear those communities. Of course, what I'm going to recommend if you're using full database is to set the range on your scanner to 0. So basically, it's going to be looking at the database and focusing on that, on those radiuses. If you put it out further, you're going to be hearing a whole bunch of circles. So visualize the whole entire map of the United States and Canada with each community with a circle around it. And you're traveling within these circles, and things are basically turning on and turning off as you leave those radiuses. So here we're monitoring these 3 towns because the circles kind of overlap one another. As we travel further down the road, we moved away from Sumner, Newport, and Boone. Those have turned off. And now we've reached the area where we're in Mayberry and Lakeville, and those agencies have turned on. So you have the ability to do all this as you travel. So you definitely have the ability to turn things on and off. And yes, keep in mind, with some states, scanners have different laws, whether or not you can have them in vehicles or not. Just make sure I'm not a lawyer or an expert at the law enforcement. So check your local laws before you put a radio in there, especially in the state that you live in. Make sure it's legal. And of course, if you're traveling through a state that it's not legal to have in the vehicle, cover it up, turn it off, do what you got to do. Certainly, if you do get pulled over by the police, don't have it blaring, in a state, even if it is legal in that state, to have it in the vehicle. The police officer is not going to be taking too kind to you when he's talking on the radio and he gets a ton of feedback. So, but yes, understanding GPS scanning. But yeah, this is how it basically will work. It'll turn things on and off as you travel. So visualize a whole bunch of radiuses and circles around each community. In a perfect world, it's just going to turn things on and off. This is not like the old school days where you had 10 banks and you're like, okay, I traveled through Ohio. Now I'm going to travel through this state. I got to turn off this bank, turn on this bank. It'll do it automatically. And we've got some people that are that have used this, like Paul B. Yeah, it'll work great. Basically, it'll turn things on and off as you travel. You create a travel favorites list within the 15 states that you're looking to monitor, and it's a piece of cake. It is awesome. Favorites list is the best way to go. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more and how to create those just by looking at radio reference. Okay. Here's a comparison. This is kind of getting us up to the programming portion of it. GPS scanning, full database versus favorites list. Now we're looking at the database scanners, your STS 100, 200, 436, 536, and Home Patrol. Full database. You're going to find that there's way too much things to scan. Basically, it's picking up everything, everything and anything. You're going to miss radio transmissions. It's going to be slower scanning speeds. By the time you hear the follow-up transmission, it's already over because, your scanner's scanning through 1,000 things. Best experiment I can recommend to you, put in your zip code on one of those radios and just let the thing go. And you're going to see that in some areas, if you're in New York City or anywhere, sitting in your apartment, you put in a zip code there, you're going to find that there is 1,000 things to monitor within a short range. So favorites list is the route good to go. Now, favorites list, you get to pick what you scan. So it's like literally you're going into, if Radio Reference was a big box store. So you're going into the Radio Reference big box store and you're going into the database and you're picking and choosing what you want to monitor. Let's say you only want to monitor fire stuff. So you're picking those channels, talk groups, and putting them into your card. Let's say you want to monitor this town, but you don't want to monitor this town. So you don't grab that one. You leave it on the shelf. You're not missing radio transmissions because your scanner is not scanning as much. So and then of course, if you're doing a road trip or you're a road warrior, you're going to program things based on where you're traveling. We're going to go into that a little bit more. But basically, if I was to recommend one or the other, favorites list is the best way to do that. Once you've created a favorites list for GPS scanning, you need to enable GPS scanning with that favorites list. If you don't do that, it's not going to work well. So definitely do that. Okay, programming tips. This is probably what a lot of you have been looking forward to. Let's take a look at some of those programming tips. Well, we've seen this map before, I think. We're going to go over it again, just so in case some of you have missed it. So I can't stress enough. Point number 1, do your research on radio reference. Now, you don't need to be a paid member to be able to look at the database. You can be just an average Joe going on the website with not even uh, a paid membership. Of course, you can set up a free account on there. Paid membership is $15 for the full year. Excuse me, $15 for 6 months. The full year is $30. So it's not that expensive. So first, do your research on radio reference. Second thing, if you haven't purchased a scanner, do your research. Take a look at what's there and then select the right scanner for the job. Once you've done that and you've got your scanner, you want to, if it's a database scanner or a clean slate scanner, you want to check for updates for firmware and such. You want to make sure that the firmware is up to date. And also, if it's a database scanner, you want to make sure that database is up to date. Use the appropriate Sentinel software for that particular radio and update the firmware and update the database. Number 4, plan out your programming. If you're creating a favorites list, you want to figure out what you want to program into the radio. Now, the great thing about it, you're doing this on the computer. Yeah. You can make changes on the fly. Remember the old days? And boy, do I remember them. When I would do, the reset on the radio because I wanted to reprogram it and then manually programming every channel in there. I used to know frequencies like telephone numbers. How many of us dial a telephone anymore? Basically, we go to our smartphone and press a name. We got to call Bill. So I'm going to press Bill and call him up. Same thing with frequencies or even talk groups. You're basically using software to be able to program it. So plan out your programming. Step number 5, create the programming profile using scanner software. So you're going to do a kind of like a plan of what you want to monitor, which is number 4, and then go up to 5, and then create that profile. So let's say I'm a trucker. I spend a lot of times on the interstate, and I know that the state police or highway patrol those roads. So maybe I'm going to go into the database and just program those frequencies. I'll program the whole state just in case I get detoured, and I have the ability to monitor those troops that I don't normally travel through. Number 6, check the programming on the scanner. Make sure it's ready to go. What I mean by that, especially if you're programming things that are not typical to most scanner enthusiasts, such as railroads, you want to make sure that system type is enabled. Make sure it's turned on. Okay. We've kind of gone over some of the stuff, but we're going to continue on. Home patrol type of scanners. Full database programming. Here's some tips. Reduce down the items that are being scanned. Set the range down to 0. Turn off certain service types. So if you don't want to monitor the secondary channels, tactical channels, interop channels, let's say railroads are enabled and you don't want to monitor that, you can turn off those service types. When you get your database scanner, a lot of times the national systems are turned on. Turn those off as well. And then, of course, use a GPS receiver when you're traveling. Here's some tips on programming a favorites list. Wow, I think I just mentioned this a moment ago, and I can't mention it enough. Do your research on radio reference. Make sure you do that, and that's going to be a huge help for you to kind of understand where those agencies are. Some of which may be on a trunk system that's a statewide trunk system. Some may be on their local county system. Some may be using old analog. And you'd be surprised that maybe some places are still using low band. Who knows? You got to do your research on radio reference. If you're scanning some of the stuff that's not typically scanned by a vast majority of the scanner enthusiasts out there, such as rail or aviation, you want to make sure that those service types are turned on when you create the favorites list, because you're not going to hear a thing unless those service types are turned on. Next suggestion, program what you need. Remember to pick out what channels and talk groups you want to scan. Don't grab whole chunks of a trunk system. you can go in there and pick individual talk groups if you wish. So if you want to monitor, certain barracks or certain departments, and let's say they're a part of a group of frequencies in the database, select just those. You can pick and choose. The other thing that I can't stress enough, see that 8 gig SD card that's over on the side? It can store many and many, many favorites lists. The things that chew up the space on the SD card are audio files. So if you're using it to record radio transmissions to that audio to that SD card, that will take up space. But for the most part, those favorites lists are basically little text files that are on there that don't take up hardly any space. And the last thing I can recommend for using a favorites list as a scanning option is enabling the GPS ability if you're using this favorites list as something that you would use for GPS scanning. Another tip that I do with my radios is the favorites list that I create for in the truck. And if I clone some of the favorites lists that I use in the house and they're also in the truck radio, I make the favorites list name, whatever it may be, Ohio GPS. So I know that favorites list is a huge favorites list for the whole entire state, and to enable GPS scanning with that. So definitely do that. I will be answering the questions that are coming in shortly. We're getting to the Q&A section shortly. So clean slate database scanners, if you're driving on those interstates. Now, most of the time they're patrolled by state police or highway patrol, so the main and secondary channels will be good. Low band channels, if listed. You're probably saying, what is he, nuts? Who is using the low band at this point? There's certain states, believe it or not, are still using low band, like Massachusetts. They use it as a secondary communication tool, and a lot of times it's a talk around for them. And if they're on a talk group with another barracks that's busy, they may use that to communicate to their local barracks. I can tell you the Foxborough barracks in Massachusetts occasionally uses low band to communicate to some of their units on 495 and 95. When the main talk group gets busy, they'll talk to them on there. So don't be shocked to hear some low band activity. So program them in, see if you hear something. You may or may not, or you may hear it on occasionally. State Public Works, a lot of times they're rolling on the scene where there's an accident, restricting lanes. Oh yeah, Radio 80. I see that it's your birthday today. Happy birthday to you, sir, or madam. I'm not too sure, but happy birthday to you. So program in those public works channels as well for the highways. And when you enter into larger cities, for example, let's say if you're traveling through Boston. Now, I know you're probably just driving through, but you may want to program the main fire dispatch channel. Reason being, they may get called to a accident scene on 93, Interstate 93, and you'll hear it on there, and then you'll hear the state police. So that's another way you can tip it off. And of course, you can make the range so it's just for the city. So that's driving on the interstates. Driving on those secondary roads. Now, keep in mind, they're going to be probably patrolled by the county sheriff and the local cities or towns. So what I would recommend, if your travels take you a lot on the secondary roads, program the county sheriff, program some of the fire main dispatch channels, and you may want to throw in those interrupt channels because you may hear the county sheriff communicating to the local city or town about something that's going on. Maybe this portion of the roadway falls under their jurisdiction versus the other. So you want to keep it basic and learn, when you're listening to the scanner, you're going to learn who's covering what after a period of time, and you can adjust that. So if you find that a certain stretch of roadway is covered by a town where it's not covered by the sheriff, maybe you want to program that into the scanner. You may want to keep in mind programming that state police or highway patrol. Oftentimes they patrol those main dragways, and programming in their secondary channels as well. Programming the low band, as I mentioned earlier, you may still hear something good there as well. State public works, if it's a state highway, they're still going to have jurisdiction there, so definitely program that in. Large cities, definitely want to program in police and fire. And of course, you're running with a GPS enabled, so as soon as you leave the larger cities, they're going to turn off. So make sure that you kind of shrink down that range so it only turns on when you're in that city and turns off. So you're not monitoring it 10 miles outside of that city, and then you're not able to hear some of those calls that you want to hear when you're outside of the city. All right, we've covered it. Road warriors and scanners. Now I want to show you real quickly if we were doing some research for radio reference. So let me just set it up over here. We're going to take a look at the database, and then we're going to get into your questions. So I'm on radioreference.com. So let's say if we were doing a quick trip from Maine to Massachusetts. Now I can tell you, just having a little bit of experience, that the Maine State Police are on the statewide trunk system, the Maine Communication Network. So I can basically click on that on the state page, and then I can basically go and scroll down to, actually not scroll down too far because this is the analog stuff. So I'm going to go to the digital trunk system, and we can see that the Maine State Police are broken up into zones. So zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and so forth. So what I would recommend doing, if you don't want to clog up the scanner so much, is to program in just the channels that are relevant. So maybe the primary and the alternative. Of course, we see that there's some encryption here, so don't bother even programming those in. I mean, if you want, you can. They may lift encryption occasionally, but according to the database, if it's got a big E, it means it's encrypted all the time. If it's a lowercase e, it means that it occasionally has encryption. So this is what I would do first, is I would start in Maine and grab the talk groups that I want in the database. Let's go back out again. So that would be for the state of Maine, program in the state police there. So if I was traveling on 95, heading south from Bangor, Maine, down to Massachusetts, that's what I would do. I spent a little bit of time in New Hampshire. So traveling down 95, we want to program in the New Hampshire State Police. I believe it's Department of Safety, if I remember correctly, and it is. So they're digital. They're conventional digital. So I'd program in all these troops, and they're all separated out. So they should have GPS latitude, longitude, radiuses, and a center point. So that's how we would cover that. And then we would go right into Massachusetts. Now, depending on where you're traveling in Massachusetts, there's 2 trunk systems currently right now. If we go under, let's see, Mass State Police, where are they? Mass State Police, here they are. Look at it, 2 trunk systems. We've got the old analog system, and we got the Commonwealth of Massachusetts system. What I recommend doing is doing your research here. Click on Mass State Police. Of course, when you're running a GPS, put in all the sites, and then look for the talk groups. So, for example, A troop, B troop, and so on. It's all listed here. And if you don't know where these barracks are located, Google Mass State Police troop map. A lot of times there'll be stuff on the website to be able to on the website in searches, you'll be able to find a map of all the troops. So I'd basically do that. As I mentioned, there is 2 trunk systems. Being from Massachusetts, the western part of the state's already built. Eventually, the eastern part of the state will be done. So you would go in here, see what you have. You could also program this in here. We notice that there's talk groups for A troop, B troop, C troop. There's 1 for D troop, some for Logan Airport, which is F troop, and of course, the other things. So program in what you have. You may program in both just so you don't miss a beat. But that's how I would do a little road trip programming from basically Maine down to New Hampshire, down into Mass. And then if I was continuing down to Rhode Island, I would look at their trunk system and do the same thing. All right, let's go back to the slideshow. Just want to remind you a couple of things before we go into the Q&A. So the Scanner Guys are brought to you by viewers like you. By supporting the show, by shopping our swag store, you're able to buy, t-shirts, hoodies. We even have a sticker. We have a couple of travel mugs now. We have a really cool tote bag. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We just relaunched the store today. So definitely check it out. So check out the scannerguyshow.com. Click on the store. Excuse me. Up on the top and go from there. And I can't stress this enough. Every single one of our shows, there's a description down on YouTube with an affiliate link. Anytime that you're ready to purchase something from Scanner Master and you're doing it online, use the affiliate link. It does help the show out with our streaming services and such. So certainly help us out. It's certainly a labor of love doing the show each and every week. I mean, I put in several hours just putting together the slide deck and promote the show. Train Aficionado Live will be with you for a spooky episode where we're talking about abandoned railways and how to find them and so forth. That'll be Wednesday, October the 19th, 2022, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, next Wednesday live. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to their social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Train Aficionado. And check out the website, trainaficionadoshow.com. The Scanner Guys. I haven't decided on what our next episode will be, so definitely tune into our social media. We'll announce it on there. Of course, Scanner Master, as of right now, is a retail partner of the Scanner Guys. Almost got confused what show I'm on. Wednesday, October the 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can tune into the Scanner Guys show. All right. Let's take a look at some of those questions. Let me go up to the starred section. So this is a good question here. What I'm guessing is happening on your 996P2 is it's getting data. When you see linked, it's usually receiving data. And then the NAC lettering typically indicates that it's a NAC code affiliated with that particular channel. A NAC code is almost like a PL tone, for that digital channel. So typically it will have some numbers on there. So what could be happening is it could be a data channel, or it could be some sort of data going on there where you're not able to hear voice. On Radio Reference, you may be able to search in their FCC database for the US. Plug that frequency in. It allows you to plug that frequency in and select your state. See who's on there. That could be why you're not hearing the voices on there. I'm sure if Joe Bearcat's watching this evening, he can kind of confirm that possibly is what's going on there. Well, Scott, welcome to the show. First time watcher. Hopefully it's not your last. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We got lots of great programming coming up in the next upcoming weeks. I can't say enough, and I need to order some of these. The 45-degree adapters, especially on that Home Patrol 1 or 2, using those is a blessing. It kind of gets the cable, turned, towards the back. And there's also adapters for your radios too. Let's say if you're using the adapter jack on, your, what is it called? Trying to think of it, the 536 or a portable. So definitely good stuff there. So this is the cable he uses for his SDS. He has several 45-degree adapter cables, so you can program the radio, and I know the data is working but none of them work with GPS. So keep that in mind, when you're doing those 45-degree angles, and go from there. Okay, so your SDS screen has started to flicker. Is this very common? 2019, I bought it when it was new. Now, there's typically I haven't taken these radios apart. I wasn't as daring as Rich to take these radios apart, but there's typically a little. I can't think of the name of it. Somebody probably knows it in the audience. It's a thin, basically. God, I can't even think of it. It's almost like it looks like a piece of tape, but it's got wires in there and it connects up. I know I'm using my Doug, but it's got prongs and it connects into the screen. I'm wondering if that has gotten loose. If that's the case, then you may want to send it into Uniden to get it repaired. I wonder if somebody said something about that. Yes, the ribbon cable. Thank you so much. Especially with doing it live, it's my brain's got so many things going on. A ribbon cable, so that could be loose, causing the screen to flicker. So it's an occasional thing. Maybe it's catching, but off and on it's going to flicker. So what I would recommend is sending it into Unit and getting it checked. I mean, that radio is expensive. You want to make sure it continues to work, but keep in mind, I'm not too sure if they're having any issues with repairs or delays. So definitely, be prepared to have a month or so wait before you get your radio back. I'm not too sure what the ETA is on radios being sent to Uniden right now. You mentioned how big databases are for area codes. Does encrypted frequencies get downloaded too? I believe it. I'm trying to think if it does or doesn't. Even if it does get downloaded, your radio on a Uniden is going to be able to detect that it's encrypted, and it'll basically stop and continue scanning. What I recommend doing is just eliminating those unless there's a possibility of them turning off encryption. For example, the thing with programming those channels into the radio is, let's say there's a major storm event and they don't have enough radios to go around, and they're using these channels that are encrypted. Some people may say, all right, you're going to have to monitor this on a scanner, and they have to turn off the encryption. So there may be occasional cases they might turn it off. In that case where there's a major storm or a major event where they turn it on so other people can monitor it, but other departments. But it depends. I mean, for the most part, there's interoperability systems that are put together for that case, so it doesn't really happen. The scanner guys, yes. Do I have any plans on getting a new person on the show with me? Right now, this is a bit of a, for someone to do this every week, or every other week, depending on if they do this show and the other show, is quite a commitment. As of right now, I'm just going to run solo, and then I have occasional guest hosts on both shows. Of course, there's a lot of trained people out there and scanner experts, so definitely we will pepper them in here and there. But for now, I want to keep the show going. I mean, the thing was, when I was out at the Dayton Hamvention, I couldn't get over how many people appreciated the show each and every week. And I really do appreciate all of you watching. I mean, it is awesome to have a community of people that love, our hobby as much as you do. And I can't say, enough about you guys. I mean, really, after seeing you guys, meeting you in person at Dayton, it really gave me the drive to continue doing the show and continuing to even beef it up even more. I want to be able to give you, great shows where there's interaction like we're doing tonight, where we demo things in past weeks, where I'm showing things on a computer screen, showing you how to do things. So, but as of right now, it's just going to be, for the most part, me, unless there's a co-host scheduled. Now, somebody asked if there's a name change. Nope. Still going to be the Scanner Guys. The Scanner Guys basically is not about me. not about Rich. It's about the community. So, guys and gals, we're all one community. We're a niche hobby. Um, so, this is a great place to be able to hang out, learn something new, answer questions like we're doing tonight. I think I may have gotten all the questions answered. I'm just going to take a quick peek. I think we covered them all, and we're under an hour, which is awesome. So keep your questions coming. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Give us a thumbs up. I'm trying to read all your comments. If you're putting it in after the live show, of course, I'm reading your comments while I'm doing the show as well. Excuse me. But definitely, keep that in mind. Nice. So Dale's out there tonight. The Empire Builder just came by the hotel he's at. That is awesome. Someday I want to take a trip on the Empire Builder. I would love to be able to do that. I think it'll be a beautiful journey to be able to take a trip. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us. If you have any show suggestions, certainly contact me through the website. We'd love to hear those. Keep watching. We love you guys. It is a labor of love doing the show. I'm going to continue doing it as long as I can. And we appreciate you. Next week, Train Aficionado Live. If you're not a rail fan, give it a shot. I mean, we do a lot of interesting stuff regarding trains and transportation. Some interesting things. We've had several of our audience members that watch the Scanner Guys actually watch the Train Aficionado show and started to become a rail buff. So you never know. You may cross into one hobby into the other. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much for everybody joining us this evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins, and this is the Scanner Guys. Have a great rest of your week and be safe out there. Chris, I haven't been to Michigan as of yet, but, I'm certainly wanting to do that. And as I saw in your email, some great rail fanning out there. I'm sure there is. So thank you so much, Chris, for being a loyal viewer like all of you out there. We appreciate it. Be safe. Have a great night. We'll talk to you again next week.